Welcome, zombie fans, to this week's episode of Reanimated. I am H.A. Conrad, here from Brooklyn, talking to you with my friend on the other side of the coast of the world, just the continental United States, Stuart Tiffin. Hello, Stuart.
Let's dial it in. Let's dial it in from the other side of the world to just, well, what are we, 3,000 miles away from each other? Something like that? How you doing?
All right. Fabulously fine. You know, it's summertime, so that means there are usually not as much news going on. We do have a couple of items here, one of which is, this is older news. I was kind of hoping that this could be updated to say that there would be a new release date, but basically Patient Zero, and we had talked about this before and had Matt Smith of Doctor Who fame and a couple of other great actors in it, and they had moved this date a couple of times, but now it has been pulled with no new date given, which is not a very good sign.
Yeah.
That's a little concerning.
It was pulled in January, and somehow we did not pick up on that. Yeah, this cast, it's a crime if this movie, I mean, if it's really bad, I guess this cast doesn't deserve to have a terrible movie made with them in it, but Stanley Tucci, freaking Natalie Dormer, Matt Smith with short hair, which I've never witnessed before.
I'm kind of hoping that like something else happens with this.
Yeah, some people in the comments of places like Bloody Disgusting, which did cover this when it first happened, are saying like, give it to Netflix. They'll turn it around. But Netflix has also been going through some stuff lately, haven't they? With canceling shows.
Yeah, I mean, they've expanded so rapidly. They've had a lot of projects going on, and I think that certain things are now catching up, or maybe they're just trying to be smarter. Like, it doesn't. I just think that this is a great cast, and it would really be a shame if we didn't get to see it. And you know, it was definitely pulled from the release schedule for this next year, so we'll see. But originally, I mean, like, look, we're talking about going back to like 2015. It was supposed to be out in like fall of 2016, and then in spring of 2016 it was delayed to February of 2017. So they pulled it from the release schedule like pretty close to that. So I don't know what is happening there. But in any case, I do hope they get their stuff together. Maybe we'll get to see it someday. But come on, Tucci and Smith, awesome.
Yeah, and Dormer's no slouch. She was really good in Game of Thrones, and fine, I guess, in Hunger Games.
Yeah, no, she's good. I'm just a very big Stanley Tucci fan.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting how much Korean horror flicks and things like that. It's kind of it's interesting how they're coming into their own.
Well, my question is, so we're looking at the trailer. This is also old news, but because there's very little going on, we're just like picking up on stuff that we haven't seen. But so the trailer for Seoul Station, which is an animated prequel to Train to Busan, is available to watch online. It's been out for a month or two, maybe as early as beginning of the year also, because I think it came out in Korea in 2016, South Korea rather. I'm trying to figure out if this is by the same director or not as Train to Busan. I think it is, but
I don't know. But either way, I'm always up for another Train to Busan type of installment. Interesting choice to do the animation, but I think it could be pretty good.
Well, but judging by the trailer, it's very on message for the original.
Oh yeah. No, absolutely. I'll admit I did not watch. I just saw the tidbit of what you put up here, which was a very long trailer.
Well, it's an episode. It's like a mini episode. It was part of a competition, and so this director, who's previously gotten a project greenlit on Project Greenlight, decided to make a pilot, or potentially like the first of many episodes of a series called The Deaf versus the Dead. And it's going to be, it's pretty hardcore low budget, but it's different. It's interesting. He wrote it, directed, and is starring in it.
Yeah, you know what? It'll be interesting to see. Like, so you get like a pilot little episode like this. Just the difference in the way that people are making content these days. Just the fact that this is even possible is pretty amazing and good, I think. So I will look at this, and maybe we should talk about it next time. But kind of a cool idea in general. And like the hero of this particular like episode is deaf and queer, so You know, I kind of like that there can be so much versatility in these kinds of episodes, and you can do what you want with them. So it's low budget, but I've watched a couple minutes of it. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, it'll be worth checking out and seeing if it gets picked up and more money gets put into it. Maybe it could be a real,
Yeah.
a real thing.
But that's the thing, you know, just having, first of all, having a hero with a disability is pretty rare, and it's hard to see that into mainstream screening and then add. And I think he already also had this featured on like Queer TV or something like that. So, you know, it's something I think we should certainly talk about. So there's no news whether it was picked up at all, though, right?
Not well. Let's see. The original article is 40 teams were given 1 weekend to shoot a 7-minute short with a chance to win $20,000. And so his is one of the guy's name is Dickie Hartz, and his is one of the 5 finalists. And this is as of last week. So this is, we'll see if it could pick it up here. He could win the 20 grand and then maybe convert it into a show, or maybe just leave it at that. Who knows? Yeah,
and I mean, he's not a novice to these kinds of projects. He also had won another Project Greenlight competition called, and he came up with an LGBT sitcom called Save the World. So at some point, I feel like he's gonna break out into the mainstream with his stuff. Maybe he'll maybe get a series out of it. So I hope so. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Let's see. That kind of wraps up the little bit of news that we have, but we are going to be reviewing a Netflix show today, or a Netflix film, and this is a film that was released at a couple of different film festivals before Netflix picked it up, and I also believe it was simultaneously released on a few different streaming outlets as well. So,
well, it's being taglined as a Netflix original, I think.
Is it? Because I saw, like, just in terms of the reviews and things that we were looking at, it definitely was like in different film festivals.
Maybe I'm full of it. I don't see anything on the splash screen, but it's
because it was in the Tribeca Film Festival,
and it won an award there for Narrative Feature Audience Award.
Right. And I think that they did this and then chopped it around, so I don't think that this was... No,
it wasn't made for Netflix. But yeah. Netflix also, like, options stuff after it's been made. You know, you see a lot of things on Netflix that are clearly this is where it's ended up, and now they've like, bought the rights to put Netflix on there, you know?
Right. But anyway, this is, so if you want to watch it, you can go to Netflix. It's like an hour and 40 minutes, and I will wait to talk a little bit about what I think about it, but I do think that in terms of the movie making, it definitely has an independent feel to it in terms of the way it was made. Definitely higher budget, or it feels like it's higher budget than some other things we've watched in a similar vein. But the premise of it's called Here Alone, and the premise of it is based around this main character, Anne, and she is in upstate New York and surviving after there has been some kind of viral outbreak in the rest of the world. So let's kick it off. This is a film directed by Rod Blackhurst and written by David Ebeltoft. This only was released theatrically this past spring, but it was making the rounds when it's awarded the Tribeca Film Festival in 2016. Let's get into brass tacks.
So initial things you can compare it to, I think, are The Battery.
Yep.
It also has a strong survivalist element, so it kind of took me back to, is it Into the Wild, that one about the kid who goes to Alaska? I kept waiting for her to eat the wrong berries or something.
Well, I kind of think she did, which is because she ends up getting sick, I thought that was the berries. There were a couple that I actually very much enjoyed the depiction of the survival piece of it, the things that you would have to think about, the things that would become as an everyday piece of survival, like just in terms of trying to keep your, in terms of your energy level and nutrition and things like that. There were a few things that bothered me a little bit about it. One is that, like, she's in upstate New York, and there's like a pond and a stream and whatever, and I kind of feel like she's missing out on the fishing piece of this, even though at some point they kind of show them fishing. But that is sort of like a much easier way to get food than trying to catch a rabbit under a cooler.
Well, yeah, they definitely. She doesn't have fishing gear. She just has like some sticks, but she does have hooks and line. But yeah,
Right.
I've definitely fished in my share of upstate New York lakes, and they're full of sunfish and other weird fish that you
Right.
can eat. So
Right.
it's a
And
big body of water too. Like there's
Right.
no way that doesn't have any fish in it.
Right. And even if you didn't have like fishing pole, fishing gear, though, to me, it's unlikely she wouldn't be able to find that somewhere since they're near a body of water. And I know it poses dangers to go and forage, but no more so than foraging for the stuff that she has been. And to have that to survive. And you're upstate New York, so of course a lot of people have fishing gear, not just like fishing poles and stuff, but like the nets and stuff like that. So even if you couldn't necessarily do the pole thing, you could probably rig up a net to be able to catch some. So that seemed a little strange to me. I mean, I think part of the reasoning I would imagine for doing that is just to show how dire her particular situation is. She's pretty much living off of wheat thins and Fruit Loops, which is not a lot of nutrition.
Yeah.
And Cheese Whiz, and in terms of trying to find a sustainable way to live, all those things are not necessarily, they're going to run out at some point, so you need to figure it out. And also having spent some time in upstate New York, there is like, honestly, there's so much game in terms of like stuff that's out there, like rabbits and deer and things like that. So I just find it a little bit unlikely that she wouldn't be able to find some of that.
That said, this movie is effective, and it's so spare. Like it's got
Yeah.
a really small cast. It's got beautiful scenery.
Mm-hmm.
I think it must have been filmed at two different times of the year, because they basically show the clearing where her car is parked in winter and in summer.
Yeah.
Which I thought was kind of interesting. Like the flashbacks are show the car in a place that looks very similar, but just like all the dead leaves and all the bare trees. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, and definitely showed the past, like the fact that it made the flashbacks more effective because you knew it was in a different time.
But I mean, that's can't be cheap either. Like to be like, all right, we're
No.
going to produce this film, which is probably on a shoestring budget, but
Right.
we're going to do half of our shooting in November, and the rest of it's going to be in May or whatever.
Yeah. I did think, despite my little gripes about the survivalist piece of it, I do think that they very effectively showed how isolated she was and that feeling of how scary it would be.
Yeah.
And the danger of being out there. And the things that they did right is that, in terms of in this particular film, these aren't true zombies and that they're the undead. They are people that are infected. It's much more similar to a 28 Days Later scenario where they have got like a rage virus or a virus that causes like crazy behavior. But just showing how she is negotiating that and trying to get food for herself. And she's figured out different ways to like mask her scent and distract them. And I think that was very effective. And I really did, in terms of the feeling of isolation and the feeling that really, up until the two other non-infected characters show up, I just felt like they did such a good job in showing how lonely it must be and how just sort of like a day-to-day survival, like uphill battle it was.
Yeah, the first 30 minutes of this movie, which is basically how long it takes before we meet the other two characters, I think is the scariest part of the film. Like I started watching this, I feel like I come across as such a weak movie watcher when I talk about this stuff on the podcast, but I started watching this around 10:30 at night or whatever, after everybody's gone to sleep, like finally, some quiet time in the house with lots of kids. And I start watching this, and I'm like, nope, I can't do it. I cannot watch this at nighttime, because where her first like foray into the neighborhood, where she is the only character on screen, but they're doing such great work with the Foley artists or whoever, the screaming, the noises,
Yeah, they're creepy.
The music is kind of haunting as far as the score goes. This was really like just the palpable sense of being alone and in danger and having no one to back you up. I thought was really effective.
Right. And then there's all this stuff that she has to do and is doing in order to stay camouflaged, in order to stay safe. But even at night, like, it was nerve-wracking because you don't know the rules of this world. You're just discovering it by following her around, basically. And so, especially the night scenes and things like that, I was just getting very stressed out watching it, just because it's like you can't see anything. And they made it it was a very effective trick, in terms of keeping her just kind of like this, lone survivor scenario. So I thought that was impressive.
So I know we were going to talk about the other two characters who show up. By the way, the guy who shows up was a cast member on Outsiders, which is Chris. Outsiders is a show about a tribe of hillbillies who live on a mountain in Appalachia, wherever the hell it is, and have like mystical powers. And he plays a eco-terrorist in the most recent season of that show. So he was the only one on the cast other than Jason, her husband, who I recognized. But both of the dudes are really good. Both of the ladies are really, really good. It was cool to see him in something else, though. I think that guy is a good actor, and he's going to be probably showing up in a lot more stuff. Did you recognize her husband, Jason?
Yeah, Shane West.
Yeah. So I was like, I know that guy's face. It was weird that he had a beard. And I think the place that I recognized him from the most is League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Like,
oh, really?
20 years ago or whatever.
How funny is that?
When he was Tom Sawyer.
Yep.
Where did you know him from?
I mean, he's been in like Ocean's 11 and like, God, what else he was in? He was in like recently. I thought he was in like some television series. I think Salem.
Mm-hmm. Nah, I never watched that.
I did not watch a lot of it, but I knew enough I saw enough that he was in that. What else was he in? I mean, he's been in a ton of TV, which is more what I know him from. But anyway, he's shown up in like all sorts of different things. And then, in terms of like the film, I don't know that he's been in a ton of stuff that I've necessarily seen him in. It's just interesting that you picked him out from League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yeah, that's not a great film and a long time ago. So, well, we all have our faults.
Yep. But I liked him. He was good. And I think what I liked about this story in general and the making of this film in general is that they kept it very uncomplicated and simple, and realistic in terms of the things that people would probably do in a scenario like this. Why they chose to end up there, in terms of the ideas of what people would do in that kind of a scenario and the choices that they would make. And we hear the choices that she and her husband made and why. And then later on, we hear from Chris about what happens with, him and Olivia and why they ended up where they are.
So, what do you think this film is saying about like gender roles and feminism and stuff like that? It's a movie about a woman. Eventually, also, there's a guy involved and another girl. But at the beginning of this film, the dynamic between her and her husband is he kind of snaps at her and tells her what to do a lot, right? Mm-hmm. He's like the guy who knows everything, and she's just along for the ride, although she's engaged, like writing down the stuff that he's telling her. But she definitely takes a back seat to him in terms of what they're going to do. And,
well, yeah, except though she does order him out to get food and medicine when it's like, okay... But the risk for that is also, large enough and ended up being a bad decision. And then she's alone. So I just feel like in some ways I do think that I was not happy about how they're portraying some of the gender roles. And I will admit to you that one of the things I disliked most was the scenario that happened between her and Olivia. Because there's a few things about why I would not buy any of that happening. And I don't know necessarily that it was... I don't think that they had to do that. They could have made it complicated without doing what they did. And I'm talking around it because I don't want to give spoilers away without talking about the fact that we're going to give spoilers away.
We're definitely going to have to give spoilers away.
Oh, yeah, but here's the mark. Here's the mark where we're going to talk about spoilers. So what we're talking about, after being totally vague and roundabout about it, is that, Anne being in the woods all alone, and Olivia and Chris they cross paths, and Anne helps them out. She's giving away her food, which is, you feel how important that is, which is what I think they did such a good job setting up in the beginning.
Yeah, the first 30 minutes of the film are basically her marshaling her very small stores of food. Exactly.
Right. And so the fact that she's sharing with them is such a huge gesture, and she's aware of it and they're aware of it. But I don't know that unless they had shown all of that in the beginning, the audience would be aware of it. And so that was, I thought, a fantastic way to show all of those things. And she and Chris slowly develop a rapport, and they are definitely attracted to each other. But Olivia, is she attracted to him, or is she just like he's her protector and she's used to having him and she's upset because of her mom? Unclear to me.
Yeah, so the blurb on the movie's website says that she is riddled with insecurity and dread at the thought of being left alone. It doesn't say anything about her wanting to get with her stepdad, which I feel like that's what the cinematography kind of makes us
right.
think. Actually, no, it's 100% that's what she's trying to do, because she gets naked and waits for him to come into the tent. So she wants him to sleep with her.
Yeah, which is ew. But that piece. But she also bonded with Anne in a few different ways as well. And she makes these like comments, which I thought were more loaded toward her mom. She made the comment about the wedding ring, like Anne's wedding ring was from a pawn shop, and she says, Olivia makes this comment that, oh, isn't it weird thinking that it once belonged to someone else, and it's clear she's talking about Chris. So there's that kind of thing. But I have to feel like what a relief it would be to find more human survivors, to know there is a relief, and you feel that. At least I did, this relief that Anne's not alone anymore, but also that Liv and Chris aren't alone anymore, and that they're all figuring out ways to survive and rely on each other. But that I just felt like it was a little too tropey, the scenario where Liv would be jealous of Anne.
Yeah, she's a teenager, and we run into this problem of teenage characters and how difficult they are to write for. But I also just think that it's strange and unfortunate that the male protector is still such a thing in this. Mm-hmm. And even though Chris tends, and by the way, he's played by Adam David Thompson, so I think that's a name we're going to be seeing in more stuff.
He was very good. They were all good in this, though. He's
got a lot of charisma, and like just a casual confidence about him that comes across nicely. And this is the kind of a similar character to what he was playing in The Outsiders too. But I'm just disappointed with the way it was written, and I wonder if part of this isn't because it was written by a dude who's like writing this dynamic because he just thinks, well, this is naturally the way it would go. And while in terms of Chris and Liv, sure, he's her guardian, he's her parent, so he's gonna be the controller. And you know what? By the time they run into Anne is a boss, and she doesn't really take guff from anybody. Mm-mm. It's mostly the beginning relationship with Jason that really gets under my skin.
Me too.
And so I don't know. I don't know if you have any other insight into that I'm not.
Well, I mean, part of it, I think what they were trying to do was to show that the two of them were trying to set up for the scenario where he wouldn't be around. Because he's the person who grew up in this area. He's the person that knew about all this survival these survival skills. She didn't know any of this, and she's got to learn it. And I think that's why he's being so overbearing and weird. I think that they played it up a little too much, and they didn't have to. There could have been a lot more nuance to it. But they didn't do that, so I think it comes off being just very machismo, stupid, and just very, to me, just a very sloppy way of showing those kinds of stereotypical relationships. But then I think that was also to contrast exactly the survivalist she becomes. So that was kind of interesting to show that contrast.
You're right. There is some very good contrast there, but yeah, and I just probably just let it go. my beef.
No, I was feeling the same thing until I saw what they were doing with her like later on. But then again, this is I think it's a small budget film. I think you may be correct. It's because it's male writers. But I do think they could have shown a little bit more strength in her character. But I do think it's interesting that just a little bit of like background that they show that in context that we didn't get before was when she and Liv are talking about how her husband had proposed to her. Wasn't exactly romantic. Right. Wasn't exactly, like all like stars and angels. He got drunk and bought her a ring at a pawn shop. And she made some weird comment like, oh, it was fine because I knew it wouldn't happen any other way, which is like really kind of sad. Yeah. And not exactly what you would want to hear. But I think maybe that shed a little bit more light on their relationship that isn't necessarily just specifically the sexism issue. There's other issues there, I'd say. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the live-in Anne thing bothered me a lot because I do think that you could have two females in a movie not vying over the male protagonist.
Is this the Bechdel test?
Yeah.
Essentially. I mean, they have conversations that aren't about a man, right? Don't they?
Yeah, but the context is about him. So that's kind of, the only one that they kind of like, is about just going up north, but that's still kind of involving him. Mm-hmm. And then the other interesting thing around this is the idea of whether to stay or to go. Should I stay or should I go? As, embodied by the famous Clash song. So Anne's got her camp and all that set up. She runs into Chris and Liv because they are on their way up north. And we don't really know what's happening. We know what's happening down south because they came from Philadelphia, correct? Or no, she worked in Philadelphia. And they were from further south, maybe?
I don't recall. I wasn't taking good notes with this one.
Well, either way, they know that whatever this is, and they talk about different communities like Buffalo and things like that.
Right. They talked about Philadelphia being taken out in one day. Right. Like that was a hearsay thing that they heard.
Right. And so, the fact that Liv and Chris are making their way north, but they're making their way north with like not knowing what's happening up there. The only little bit of information we have about that is that Anne she has her little crank radio and you hear this, I think a repeated message in French. Yeah. It was hard for me to hear it. But hearing the little pieces that I did, I don't think that things are good up north either. So, I think
the piece of hope you could hold out for that is that they've still got electricity to broadcast a repeating message. And I don't speak French well enough either to have understood it all, but apparently it's a list of, or part of the transmission is a list of places in Quebec, whether or not they are safe places.
Well, this is also why it's hard to translate it, is because it's Quebec French. It's Quebecois, which is archaic French, and it's harder for me anyway to understand. But where did you find that information? Because I did look everywhere.
I forget. It was somewhere.
Nice, good looking, good investigative reporting.
Way to hold on to your sources. I totally just read that and then was like, okay, click next. What?
Because I did not hear that. I heard something like, this is my almost like, I don't know if people are out there and this is my last message or something like that. So I don't know how positive it is. That's the gist of what I could get. But again, my Quebecois is not good. So if anybody knows Quebecois, tell us what they said. But but this is the thing. They are going up there blind, and they keep saying stuff like, oh, if you stay in place, you die. But there's another risk at staying someplace, though I think where they are is probably less dangerous than other places. So I guess this part didn't necessarily... I wasn't necessarily convinced by this piece of information, but part of the idea about the virus or about the infected is that they're staying where there's food, and food includes dead bodies. So something that she says is that once they're done with those bodies, they're going to start moving and looking for more food. But if they're like riddled with the virus, how long could they possibly survive, right?
Well, yeah, that's okay
Like,
though. We can suspend disbelief to have, we managed to do this with all kinds of things with zombies. We don't have to worry too much about. I mean, it's hard to say how long she's been out there.
true, but if this is like a true, I mean, she's been up there at least a season, so.
Yeah. So a few months.
But if this is actually a virus, at some point the body is gonna fail, because they're not saying that these are undead creatures. But anyway, that aside, they then sort of around these two questions, whether to stay or whether to go. That's around that they're sort of like putting little like debates, that it isn't a debate about staying or going, it's a debate about forgiving yourself, and in Anne's case about what happened with her family. I thought this was a little, I'll be honest with you, I like, and this is like a big spoiler coming up, the whole scene where she has to off her kid, it's pretty rough. I mean,
dude, you don't understand how hard the whole baby element of this
is hard and terrible and
so difficult on me. And from the beginning that she had a baby at the beginning and now she doesn't. Yep. But every so often she sniffs her onesies like that are in the trunk, or she's playing with like a kid's toy. And I had so much trouble with it, and that was a big reason for also why I couldn't keep watching it the first time I tried to. And after I finished watching this, I went and found a baby in my house and gave her a big hug.
Just a random baby?
I've got lots of them. No, yeah, I found, my babyest baby, and I was just like, nice. I'm not letting go of you for a good 15 to 30 minutes.
How did she feel about that?
She was cool with it.
All right, that's sweet. No, and so the whole scenario where her kid gets infected, and she is the one who infected her, and like then has to basically kill her, and she kills her with like a bottle of aspirin. And I will say I did, while hunting for the translation of the French, whatever it was, on on the interwebs, I came across the Facebook page for this film, and there were a lot of very upset people about that particular scene. So I will say that if this is something that would traumatize you, do not. This is pretty traumatizing. And
I don't really understand why people would be complaining. It's horrible. It's really difficult to watch. But you're going to complain to the movie Facebook page?
Yeah, I think people felt like there should have been more warnings or something, but and I get that, but it's also like it's a zombie film, anything goes. You see a baby in the beginning, it's on, the writing's on the wall, like you didn't have to continue watching after that.
And it is not a gory. It's not even an on-screen. It's just you see no. There's nothing over the top about it. It's just a tragic thing.
Yeah, and the idea that it was a mom, the mom has to do this, and it's a horrible, horrible thing to have to do.
I think anybody who's going to complain about that, as affecting as it is, has to probably do some real soul searching about what's going on every day in Syria. But
anyway, I did notice that they got a lot of ire on there, and they did respond very. Like the filmmakers were responding to it, and I thought that they were very respectful, and also like this wasn't done to shock, this was to show the story, and I'd agree with that. So it was just interesting how much flack they were getting, that's all.
Yeah, I think that's noteworthy. I kept wondering, because the flashbacks eventually showed us this, but like once she got the blood on the baby, I was like, well, that's it. We probably won't even get another scene. We'll just know that the baby died as a result of this. So I wasn't really sure that they were going to keep coming back to another flashback showing what happened to the baby. It was almost like that scene didn't have to happen in a way, and your imagination could do the work for you, I guess, would be the only, for me, like the only thing that you could say, oh, you don't have to show the baby contracting the disease, and then finally poor Anne coming to terms with what she has to do.
Yeah. I don't know what the answer is, but I don't feel like they did anything I don't feel like they were being manipulative or whatever with this, which is some of the accusations were. I do think it was in the storytelling, telling Anne's story and about what she had become. So, and I don't think, I mean, they did not go into like as you said, they imply what's going to happen, and they show sort of the method, but they don't actually show the baby dying or anything like that, you know.
Well, I've already said my piece on it. It's really difficult
to watch it, though.
to watch it, but story-wise, I can understand why they did it. And it shows, like Anne is a badass. We know this from the beginning. I don't know, she just coats herself in poop and then
I know.
dumps pee all over herself constantly throughout this film. How many times does that happen? Like 2 or 3 times?
Many times.
And she's like fearlessly going into town to get supplies, even though these scenes are really, really, really scary. And then, it takes a lot of that edge off when she does reunite with a couple of other survivors. So then the movie becomes more, you're kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop in a way. You're waiting for Chris to flip on her and take all her stuff, or, right? Isn't that kind of the first thing you thought was going to happen?
Yep.
But Chris turns out to be a good dude. And then, I guess, just kind of fast forward to the end, we've talked about the Olivia and Chris love triangle, as weird as that is. The final couple scenes, you have Liv do something to Anne, which seems unforgivable. What did you think about this progression of actions?
Well, I think when basically Chris and Anne knock boots, and then Olivia gets all upset, steals food, and goes off in a huff, basically. I think that they would have addressed it then. And I also don't think for a second that they would have let Liv go into the house with them. I don't think they would have let her be part of that particular mission, but whatever. The fact is that they did that. I also don't think that Liv, after, sort of seeing what the dangers and things are out there, are gonna I don't think and how effective Anne is at dealing with things. I just don't think she's going to treat Anne in this way, not in the house. I don't think she's going to address it there. That's the part that bothers me so much, like the whole jealousy trope or envy trope, and then basically trying to take some. I feel like life is too precious here, and just even as pissed as she is or as upset as she is, she's not going to take it out that way.
Well, unless she's like beyond moral, she's like flipped. Basically, like she tries to kill Anne, and not even in a brave way, just in like I'll beat you and then leave you for dead, and you'll probably get eaten to death. Like, wow.
Well, she doesn't even just knock her out. She ties her to a cabinet.
Yeah.
Like, come on, bullshit.
There's no coming back from this, and this is a sociopathic thing to do, and she hasn't really exhibited too many of these sorts, other than the taking all the food. Yeah. And, she's like a weird, selfish teenager. Sure, fine. But these are extreme ends that she is going
and
to.
And I feel like I guess my issue with it was just that, I can see this happening at some point, but you've got to show more of a build up to it with the character. Yeah. And I don't think that they effectively did that. But I still don't buy that it would actually happen that way. And then, so basically she leaves Anne to die. One thing I couldn't figure out, and I don't know if you saw it, like she was pouring like stuff over herself to cover up the scent of blood. But what was it? It was like oil and vinegar or something.
I wasn't sure because it sounded like it really hurt when she did it. So maybe it was bleach. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think she was in a lot of pain, and that was a pretty scary scene too, when the zombie's in the house and she's in the freezer and she's just waiting for that thing to open up. But she's a total boss, and she runs out and 360 no scope, one shot kills a zombie. And then runs into the woods after Liv has, blatantly forgotten to pour the pee on herself, which is step one of surviving in this zombie world.
Right.
She's brought doom down upon herself and Chris. Mm-hmm. Chris is a boss too, and it's just like, I will hold off these 5 or 6 zombies with like a knife and a tiny tire iron. But then Anne is double boss. But then she makes a decision. Like, she goes through her 4 bullets, doing some okay shooting. She only, I think, kills 1. Eventually, maybe kills 2. And then there's a big chunk of this that doesn't get played out on screen. And I think she might have even killed another one with a knife, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
But she makes a decision here. And what do you think about that?
I don't buy the decision that she made. Although in some ways, I mean, because clearly Chris was getting bitten, or he was whatever, so he was already infected.
No, he wasn't already infected.
Yeah, he was. He was bitten.
I didn't see that.
He was like bitten in the shoulder, I think. So I feel like that played into the decision she made, but I still don't know that she would have made this decision, given what had just happened to her and what Liv had done to her. I don't know. I don't feel like that is plausible.
From my perspective, I don't think he was bitten, and so it was just a decision like, do I go with the guy who I might be, in love with, or the guy that I'm getting into a relationship with, or the child
that tried to kill me?
The child that tried to kill me, and she picks the child, and then she seems pretty pissed off about her decision when she's in the car. Like the final shot of the film is her screaming.
Yep.
While Liv is on her lap, listening for signs of life on the radio. And it's a bizarre ending for this story, and it's super bizarre given Liv's actions. But you also, I guess, now think like, well, the only reason they weren't getting along is had his throat ripped out and is lying on a forest floor, so nothing to worry about.
I just don't know. I don't think she would have made that decision. I know that they were trying to play into the maternal thing, and that's the thing. But but then had she, okay, let's say for a second that Chris wasn't infected, though I think he was. Like, had she killed Liv, would Chris have ever forgiven her?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the question. And I don't know what the answer to that is. So in this sense, they did do an interesting job at like a very weird and conflicted kind of ending.
Yeah.
Though apparently, based upon the comments, people were very confused. So I think not everybody understood where the choice was and what choice she made. You know what I mean? I don't know that they could have been any more clear about it, though. I mean, they have her counting those bullets down like every other scene. It feels like so.
Yeah.
The other thing people seem to be pretty confused about was why she put blood in the milk for the baby, which I'm like, really? Like, you don't get that the kid's infected?
Oy vey.
Yeah, I know. So anyway,
it was a good film, and I don't know why it's only getting 50% or so on Rotten Tomatoes.
I think people felt like it was, based upon the negative reviews I read about it, people felt like it wasn't innovative. They didn't like that there weren't a ton of zombies in it. They thought that some of the things that you and I were bothered by in terms of the gender roles and the basically too over the top tropey crap about, male dominance and whatnot was silly. But I have to say, I really thought it was well done, and overall, I can't be unhappy about this film. And I thought that there was enough in this to be thinking about and obviously talking about. More so than I have seen with some other projects. I think it was well executed. I thought that the camera work was good. The editing was good. And even though the pacing was definitely, especially in the beginning, slower, there was a reason why it was so deliberate. So I actually very much enjoyed it.
Yeah, I thought the cast was really good.
Despite how upsetting parts of it were. But, I have to say that in part is why it was successful. There was definitely stakes. There was skin in the game, so to speak. So.
And I think the woman who played Anne, Lucy Walters, did a really, really good job. Like the transformation, that contrast that we got to see of her going from, I don't know, suburban housewife to forest survivor badass was good.
Yep.
And she carried that role well. And then the other two, Liv and Adam David Thompson, and Liv was played by Gina Piersanti, and they both did a good job too.
No, they did a good job, and I actually thought that as a cast, despite my objections about some of the plot lines that they decided to pursue, I feel like the three of them had good chemistry overall, and they played that off well. And sometimes you see with these kinds of films that that's not there, and I do think that they had a very strong cast for this film.
So there it is. I guess Here Alone, it's worth a watch, and it's on Netflix, and who knows how much longer it will be, but I would check it out if I were you.
If you have watched Here Alone and you liked it or disliked it, we would love to hear from you. Drop us a line at reanimatedpcast.com, which is, just put it in the notes, or you can send us an email at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, or you can tweet at us, reanimatedpcast, and we would love to hear what you think about it. And if you do know the French translation of the radio broadcast, I would very much like to know. Anything else to add, Mr. Tiffin?
No, that sounds about right. So holler at us and get back with us next time.
And join us next time when we review Viral, which is another Netflix. It's streaming on Netflix right now. Until then, ciao.
Bye.